morning, everyone. We have gathered here today for the inaugural session of the Entrepreneurship Week by EIC. We have with us today Mr. Vineet Saxena. Sir is the CEO and co-founder of Indus Diva. As a technology entrepreneur, he has created one of the biggest and most successful online fashion and lifestyle marketplace in India, that is Myntra. He has led products, operations, and engineering initiatives and worked on various facets of startups ranging from bootstrapping, team building, and go-to-market strategies. Mr. Vineet has graduated from the Indian Institute of Technology Kanpur and holds vast experience in the technology world. Thank you for joining us today, sir. We welcome you.
Thanks. Thanks for giving me an opportunity also, and great to see so many of you over here. I hope my story and my journey and how well I am able to narrate it to you should be able to add some value to you guys.
So you had a wonderful journey from doing engineering to confounding Bytedge, Myntra, and Indus Diva. We would love to know more about your experiences. So would you please share your journey with us? The floor is all yours.
Sure. Great. So I will just, before I start, I will just give a very quick background, and I know that most of it is on LinkedIn, okay, but still would help you guys get some context to where I come from and what actually kind of prompted me to get on the path of entrepreneurship when this thing was not the in thing, I would say, at that point of time. Okay, so I come from the town of Lucknow in UP. Okay, and I studied my engineering in IIT, graduated in '99, mechanical engineering, and then as the in thing in those days was went on to join a software engineering job. Okay, so did my first stint with Mahindra British Telecom, which is now Tech Mahindra in Pune. Okay, and then after about a year or so, I joined another startup called Pragati Technologies in Hyderabad. And that is where I really got a flavor of working with the startups and the kind of the flexibility, challenges, and the learnings that a startup environment would typically give you. Okay. So having spent more than a couple of years over there, what I did was I moved to Bangalore in 2002 and then again joined a startup which was having its main office in Santa Clara in US, but they were setting up an offshore product development center here in Bangalore. So I was, I think, the 10th or the 11th member over here. So again, it was a startup environment, but we grew very rapidly. We grew from like a 10-member team to about a 1,200 people team in a span of less than 1.5 years. Okay, so that was a crazy growth, and I was a part of hiring. I actually had to kind of lead the sprints for hiring various kind of engineers as a part of the team, and I got exposed to various other facets of running the company. Okay. Now, in 2006, and I will also tell you about the timing part of it, because say that you should start up when you are single and not married. In fact, I started up when I just got married. Okay, so that was a kind of many people say that how did you pull it off? Okay, because starting a company just after getting married is something which which would actually put a strain on the marriage. So thankfully, I am still together with my wife. Okay, so she kind of held off and she took that well in her stride. Okay, and I was lucky. I'm also lucky to have her in my life. Okay, so coming back in 2006, I, along with another friend and batchmate of mine, okay, Ashutosh, we started working on a particular idea, which was more onto setting up a small team, which would take up some very specific projects related to small companies, startups who were struggling with technology. And we named the company as Bytedge Solutions. Okay, and the idea was to kind of start it off and see that how it runs. Not really something which we had any plans initially in the initial days to kind of really grow it beyond a certain point. Okay, but as things progressed, we figured out that if we have to do it, we have to do it full-heartedly. Okay, completely into it, and not as a side stint. Okay, so we kind of set off on this particular journey. In the sense that we started hiring few more people. Okay, we left our jobs and we jumped right in. Okay, so it was a kind of a decision which was quite scary at that point of time, to tell you the truth. Okay, because out of all the things, the habit of seeing a certain amount credited into your account by the end of every month is the most scary habit. Okay, and the minute you have to see of it, okay, it's the biggest leap that you have to do in terms of kind of making the cut, I would say. Okay, because I have seen many of my friends, they haven't been able to do that. Okay, so around the same time we got in touch with Mukesh Bansal as well. So Mukesh was a college senior of ours. Okay, and Mukesh was in the Valley at that point of time, and he was looking at relocating to India. He had already started working on a business idea which was very similar to what Cafe Press and Zazzle used to do in US. So these were the companies which were into personalized merchandising, and they were fairly big companies. They were like companies which were, I would say, doing a revenue on the top line of around $250 million odd. Okay, so Mukesh's idea was that in India, we don't have anything like this, and probably there should be a market for personalized merchandise. Okay, and it would be a good time to come to India and set up something like this. So we got in touch through our alumni network. Okay, and then we met a couple of times. We liked each other. Okay, we kind of shared the you can say the same sort of chemistry. All three of us, me, Ashutosh, Mukesh. Okay. And then the three of us decided that yes, probably it's good enough that we can actually embark on the journey of entrepreneurship together. So that's how the initial team was formed. Okay, and mind you, in the hindsight, when we look at it, all three of us came from technical backgrounds. Okay, I was a techie, Ashutosh was a techie. Mukesh also was a techie, but he was mostly working on the business development and the product management side. Okay, so there was a bit of a difference over there. But yes, all three of us came from a technology background. None of us had done MBA. Okay, and none of us had any experience working with any consumer internet startup. Okay. So running a consumer internet startup or any consumer business is a very, very different ballgame altogether. It involves a different set of challenges. For us, the concept of consumer was not there at all. For us, they were only clients, okay, with whom we used to kind of exchange requirements and discuss the project requirement documents and all, and then talk to the analyst and get on the work for the development. So we decided that yes, good enough for us to kind of take a jump right in, and that's how we started working on the idea of Myntra. Okay, at the very beginning, we were not sure that which company was going to run in the longer run, whether it was Myntra or it was ByteEdge. Okay, so we thought that okay, let us hedge this. Okay, let us run both the companies. Okay, and so one of us, Ashutosh, actually took the mantle of running ByteEdge, while Mukesh and myself took the mantle of running Myntra in the earlier days. And in hindsight, if I have to see, then running two companies at once is actually a very disastrous kind of a decision that you can take. Okay, particularly when both the companies are doing well. Okay, so very quickly we realized that this is not going to work out. Okay, we need to have a different person come in and take the mantles of the other ByteDust Solutions as a CEO while we work on focusing our energies on building up Myntra. Okay. In initial days, Myntra was bootstrapped by the help of the money which was initially put in by Mukesh. Okay, so we had some runway. Okay, we had a runway of about 6 to 8 months, but we definitely needed to raise money. Okay, and in those days there were not too many VCs around. Okay, in fact, the entire concept of the VC or the VC industry was very, very new to us as well. Okay. Mukesh, having spent a significant time in the valley, he already knew about that. He was exposed to all these things. So he actually led the charge in terms of going about the fundraising part of it. But we got turned down by a lot of investors. Okay, they said that you guys are well educated, you had a good paying job. Why are you not trying to do something which is more meaningful? What fun are you guys going to have just trying to print some pictures on the mugs or the t-shirts? Okay, so I won't take the name of the VCs, okay, but yes, that was the kind of the feedback we used to get in those days. Okay, and a lot of them thought that this idea would not fly, this would not work, and we said that, okay, fine, let us see, let us try for some more time. Okay, and as the hedging strategy of running two companies, I told you that was not a good decision, but there were a couple of instances where ByteDust Solutions actually helped Myntra with some money in the very early days. Okay, when Myntra ran out of money and we didn't have any funding on board. Okay, very early days those were. So so yes, I mean, it's again both good and bad aspects, but yes, they did. And fortunately, in my network, when I was hired in Tavan Technologies in Bangalore, so I was hired by a person called Subrat Mitra, who was the head of India operations at that point of time. So Subrat was running a small venture fund called Erasmic Ventures at that point of time, and he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, Vineet, what are you doing these days?" He knew that I had left the company and I had started something of my own. And he had a very small fund, so even micro of micro VCs, you would call it. Okay. And I told him that, yes, we have a team of 3 people and we are doing this thing. He said, "Why don't you guys come over for a coffee and let us talk about this?" So he called us over, and within a couple of meetings, he agreed and he said that, "Okay, I will cut you a first check of 25 lakh rupees, not 25, I think 40 lakh rupees. Okay. And you guys can start with that." And we said that, okay, we have another couple of investors who can come in and we can make this round size of about 1 crore totally. Okay. And then we can get on with this. So he said that it's a good enough start, and what do you guys want to do? I said that, no, we feel that personalized merchandise can be sold online, and we feel it's a good idea. So there were no questions about the market size. There were no questions about the product market fit, the strategy. It was just, as they say, that the first check has to be that the investor should be in love with one of the founders. Okay, so that is how it should always go, and that's what I have always personally felt. Okay, I have raised angel investment multiple times after that, and I have always felt that that is what the criteria is. Okay, so we were lucky we got the check. Okay, and we went on with our plans. Okay, so our plan was obviously to kind of set up a basic functioning website. Okay, and then get things rolling, get it off the ground, have the entire operation set up, the logistics partner set up, and all of these were challenges in itself, not because we never knew how to do that, okay, but because the entire ecosystem was not prepared for that. In those days, the logistics companies, the Blue Darts and the DTDCs of that time, they have never heard of shipment being shipped through e-commerce and through their parcels being shipped on a one-off mode and getting delivered in a span of 2 to 3 days. Okay, they were not prepared for that. Mukesh since he came from US, which had a much better infrastructure in terms of logistics and all. So obviously, once we got the product launched over here, the website launched over here, we realized that this is a new set of problems that have to be solved from ground up in India. Okay, it is not something which I can just call 3 courier companies one day and then sign the agreement and then ask them to start picking up the shipments from tomorrow. That's not going to happen. Okay. So a tremendous amount of challenges with respect to logistics. Okay, Google AdWords in those days was in its infancy. Okay, so very far cry from what you would see these days. Okay, so very far cry from what you would do. They were also in the early days at that point of time. Okay, so so there was absolutely zilch digital marketing, if I have to call it. Okay, we relied very heavily on email marketing, sending out emails to our network and all, and then doing partnerships with some of the corporates in terms of reaching out to the initial set of the customers. Okay. So that's how we got the website running. We got the operations set up. We tied up with few vendors who can actually do these personalized products for us. So I think we started with selling about 8 to 9 different kind of product categories. Okay, and the technique of printing the photo or the text on each one of them was different. Okay, so you would need a different kind of machine to actually print a photo on a T-shirt, vis-a-vis on a mug. Okay, the technology was different. So some of the things we got in-house, some of the things we had to tie up with different vendors who would actually do it and then would deliver it to us. We would do a QC and then ship it out. So it was not a very simple pick, pack and ship kind of an operations that you would see in a typical e-commerce. It was pick, process, pack and ship. Okay, so because each order was essentially different. So after the launch, the plan that we had made was that we would be able to hit around 100 orders per day in about 6 months of launch, if I remember correctly. Okay, and very clearly we realized that we were not even going to reach 1/10 of that number. Okay. So after 3 months of launch, we were having 2 or 3 orders on a daily basis. Okay, and we were kind of at our wits' ends as to what exactly should we be doing so that we can bump up the number of orders, and this entire idea would actually not fall flat on its face. Okay, so we went back to our investors. We went back to Subrat and few other guys who had actually put in money into us, and these guys said that listen, you guys should be actually doing some more bulk orders, as they would call it. Okay, and the bulk orders could come from schools, they could come from universities, they could come from corporates. Okay, so take those bulk orders. Okay, and that would actually bump up your business volume, and your business would grow. Meanwhile, you just focus on getting all the B2C aspect of running the business right, and slowly the B2C orders would also grow. Okay, so that was a good advice. I think that was what the first pivot, as we would call it internally. It was not exact. I wouldn't exactly call it a pivot. It was more of a course correction that we did at that point of time, and we launched a separate B2B vertical. That B2B vertical would actually take care of the orders coming in from institution or the institutional orders, and as luck would have it, it has started growing very rapidly. Okay, so much so that come 2008, we had raised our Series A funding. Okay, from the likes of IDG and NEA Indo-US Ventures. So these 2 VC firms today are known as Chirate and Kalari Capital. Okay, so those were our Series A investors, along with the Excel India. So Subrat's VC firm Erasmic Ventures, which actually invested in us in the first round, got acquired and actually became a part of Excel India. So that's how Excel got associated with us as well. Okay. And from there on, it was basically it was a lot of execution, a lot of hard work, and really working on ramping up the things which would actually help us scale up the business. Okay. And even though the B2C part started growing, but it did not grow to an extent where I would say that we would primarily be known as a standalone B2C company. Okay. Our 68 to 70% of the revenue was still coming from the B2B business. Okay. And yes, so from that point till around early 2010, okay, we primarily focused on the B2B part of the business. And after focusing on the B2B part of the business in 2010, we raised our Series B funding from Tiger Global. It was led by Tiger Global. Okay, and so I will tell you what happened after we raised the Series B funding. But before that, there are a couple of interesting things which had happened. Okay, so one of the things which had happened was that we had cracked a partnership with the IPL teams for selling personalized jerseys. Okay. Now, that happened, I think, in 2008. In 2008, we got a call from Reebok. So the country head of Reebok reached out to us, and he said that we are having a hard time with our vendor. He's not able to scale up and deliver on the personalized merchandise. You guys have some name in this space, so can you actually help us out? So in those days, we were doing printing on T-shirts and all, but we were not using the kind of the technology which these guys wanted. Okay, so we actually figured out within a span of very short duration as to how to actually personalize the IPL jerseys. Okay, and initially, after talking to these guys and presenting it to them, the meeting, we were able to crack a deal for 4 IPL teams. Out of 8 teams, we were able to crack a deal for 4 teams, for which we were the official partners of supplying the personalized jerseys. So it started from there, and the next year we were all 8 teams were in the kitty, along with Team India as well. Okay, so in fact, we did a kind of a small, you can say a small mobile kiosk with Team India. Okay, when the Australian cricket team was touring at that point of time, so our mobile setup would actually travel with the cricket team for their entire duration of the tour, and then in the stadium itself, they would actually sell those jerseys at that point of time. So that was quite a hit. We started getting noticed. And all these companies, Nike, Reebok, Adidas, Puma, and all, they had partnered with us within a short span of about 1.5 years. Okay, and we set up personalized brand stores for all these guys online. Okay, so nobody was offering them that kind of a service, and they were very delighted with the level of the engagement that we had with them and the kind of the service that we were offering to them. So so much so that in around 2010 IPL, the number of jerseys we sold was more than the total number of the jerseys sold offline by these guys. Okay, so that was one of the main highlights which kind of got reported in one of the PR articles that we did. Okay, it was picked up by Tiger, and Tiger got interested because of that particular thing. So they had a similar investment in Brazil in a company called Netshoes, and they said that your story is kind of shaping up the same way as what their story has been. Obviously, they were at a very, very different scale at that point of time. We were doing some 270 orders a day, and those guys were already at about 10,000 orders a day. Okay, so they said that Tiger Global was being run by Lee Fixel in those days, and he met us and he said that you guys are kind of primed up rightly for going this Netshoes way, and that is the reason for my investment in you guys. So now you guys focus entirely on the B2C business. You don't need to focus on the B2B business at all, because a lot of things are kind of shaping up. The logistics is getting better. The internet penetration is getting better. Okay, so people are becoming more and more comfortable buying on the internet. So please focus on the B2C part. And effectively, that around that time frame, we shut down the B2B division. Okay, and we started focusing more on, again, a second course correction, which led us from personalized merchandise to a broader fashion and lifestyle category. So that is how Myntra came in the final shape and form that we actually see them today. Okay, we started tying up with various other brands. Okay, those brands got onboarded, and then we started doing some really good digital marketing campaigns around that as well, and we slowly started picking up steam. Okay. So that's how finally Myntra came to the final shape and form. Okay, and as far as I am concerned, I played various roles while with my journey with Myntra. So I started off being the head of the engineering, okay, and developing the entire backend system, the portal, other tools which were required for ensuring the smooth operations and all. Within a year, I realized that one of us have to actually start looking into the operations, and I decided that I would be the one, and collectively it was decided that I would still be the one, because I come from mechanical engineering background, and that is the closest to operations. So even though I haven't worked a single day in a mechanical engineering job, okay, but yes, so I picked up the mantle of the head of operations for both the B2C and the B2B verticals. I set up both the teams, the fulfillment teams for B2C as well as B2B, and the customer support team. Ran it successfully for another year. In 2008, when we raised our Series A investment, the board told us that yes, you guys would grow, but your product portfolio is still very limited. So you need to focus on the product portfolio part of it, and one of you should actually take up that role. So again, I took up the role of the product head. Okay, and this role of product head would involve a lot of R&D, because this was not a kind of a product that would typically go in the market and would just pick it up. Okay, so it involved R&D, wherein you would say, figure out that what kind of personalization can be done on the various products that are used by the consumers in day-to-day life, whether that particular personalization cost is something which is feasible, would be paid by a consumer, and still the company would make some money out of that. So very, very interesting 1 year in that particular role. Okay, and then after another year, what I did was I took up the additional responsibility of running the online operations as well. So, which kind of continued till the time I was associated operationally with Myntra in 2011. Okay. So that is about my story. About Myntra, okay, of how Myntra got started, what happened in the early days, okay, what were the challenges, and operationally I got out of Myntra in 2011, but I was a shareholder till 2014 when it got acquired by Flipkart. Okay. So yes, when it got acquired by Flipkart, and it became a part of the Flipkart family, and then all of you would have heard about Myntra by around 2014-15 timeframe.
Thank you, sir. That was really an inspiring story. It's analogical to the roller coaster ride, we can say. So, sir, as you said, like when you started Myntra, all of three were from the technological background. So, was there any time you felt like there is a need of finance background team member or a team member from marketing side or something?
Yes. So, as I told you guys in the beginning only that none of us had any experience with a consumer company. Okay. So, what really marketing entailed, what really operation entailed, we had no clue about that. Okay. One thing which we had a unwavering attention and focus was on customer satisfaction. Okay. And I think that was one of the things which set us apart from the other companies also that was trying to do the same thing. And there were multiple other companies which sprang up in the fashion internet space and ultimately fizzled out. But I would say that there were two companies at that point of time. So Sachin and Binny were just also starting across the town, okay, and we would meet and interact often and exchange notes on some of the things. So they also had an unwavering dedication towards customer satisfaction. Okay, so ultimately, the meetings were kind of done with a very single focus that if there is something which is impacting the customer, then that is the highest priority thing. Okay, if that is something which is going to have a long-term impact on the customer, then let us address that first. Okay, everything else was deprioritized. So that is how we used to kind of do everything. Because you also need to realize that in those days, especially in the early days of 2007, 8, 9, a lot of people were still not very comfortable buying over the internet. Okay, because some of them who had bought over internet in 99, 2000, 2001, when they were the first dot-com wave. Okay, uh, their experience had been very, very sorry to say the least. Okay, because they at times they would actually be cheated, the product would not get delivered, the money would not get refunded. So all three of us have answered calls, customer calls, where we have been asked questions like, "आप हमारा पैसा लेके भाग तो नहीं जाओगे?" ठीक है? Because there was no, we introduced COD only in 2000, late 2009, I think. Okay, or early 2010. Before that, everything was online payment. You have to prepay, and then only your order would be shipped. Okay. So we would regularly get these calls on our customer support number and say that हम तो जानते नहीं हैं हम आपको कैसे trust करें और कैसे आपको पैसे दें, ठीक है? So that was a kind of the environment and the kind of the mindset that we had to crack. And obviously, one of the things we decided as a team and as a company philosophy was that if the customer is trusting us enough with their money, then we cannot let the customer down. Okay, so the entire ethos of the company was built around that. For us also it was like that. For Flipkart also it was like that. So they also did a phenomenal job in terms of like when they were only doing books. I mean, they had rave reviews. I mean, people would just rave about them. They just loved Flipkart. Okay. And that is what separated us, both Myntra and Flipkart, from the other companies. Okay, and later on we hired other people, like senior people from those companies, and we would talk to the management of those companies and all, and we would figure out that yes, their motive is not the customer satisfaction. That is probably at number 2 or number 3. Okay, it's not the number one thing. So for us, it was always the number one thing.
Thank you, sir. Like one more thing, as you mentioned, there was people weren't comfortable purchasing online, and you faced challenges by dealing with the logistics and the vendors in the initial years. So, what gave you the drive and the motivation behind to continue in the Myntra, and what was the vision behind it?
So the vision initially was very simple. When we started, we said that okay, we would grow this company into a 100 crore company first. Okay, that was the first target. So let's grow the business into a 100 crore business. Then when we raised our Series A funding, we said that this should now be a $100 million business at least. Okay, so we revised the target. Okay, and see, when we started, we never did any market study at that point of time, in sense that okay, whether there is a market for personalized merchandise or not. Okay, one of the reasons why the B2C sales did not pick up for us was because personalized merchandise is a very complicated term. Okay, nobody, a typical customer would not understand what a personalized merchandise is. Okay, um, so they had a hard time in terms of understanding, okay, the messaging that was going out. Okay, you can get a personalized t-shirt, you can get a personalized mug and all. So the word personalized was also very difficult for them to understand. So there was a lot of customer education that we had to do, and then the selling that we had to do. Okay, what really gave us the motivation to go on was the fact that we wanted to build a company, which was, as I said, that initially reach a scale of 100 crores. Okay, 100 crores, and not in terms of gross sales, but in terms of at least the valuation. Okay, so mostly the investors who have invested in us, and that was the idea. So and be the market leader. Okay, so when we were operating in the personalized merchandising space, we were the market leader. Okay, within a short span of about 6 to 8 months, there were 4 or 5 other companies in India who were doing business at that time. We were market leader by miles. Okay, and so in the initial days, it was all about, okay, we want to build the biggest company in the personalized space out of India. Okay, because we are already seeing what Cafe Press and Zazzle has done, and that gave us the energy to kind of chase this particular dream down. Obviously, money is important. Okay, had the funding would not have happened, then we would have run out of steam. Okay, and we would have no option but to kind of shut it down.
That was certainly a futuristic vision, sir. So how can we as an entrepreneur and the startup can identify such vision and such opportunities in the future? That could be a great big thing.
Yeah. So I would say that now it's a very different world. Okay, and now the ecosystem is very strong as what it was 14 years back when I started. Okay, I'm still a part of that ecosystem. Okay, I am technically doing my 4th startup now. Okay, so after IndusDiva, I started something else. IndusDiva is still running. Okay, but I have stepped down from the operational role, so I'm working on a startup idea which is still in stealth mode, and I hope to come out of the stealth in probably April or May next year. Okay, so what I've seen is that every time when I'm starting, obviously you face a new set of challenges. Okay, but the ecosystem becomes much more valuable. Okay, in the sense that starting becomes easier. Okay, at the same time, searching for something what you want to really work on becomes a little difficult. Okay, because my philosophy is that if you have an idea in your mind, at least 6 people more are thinking about that particular idea. So you are not alone with that idea. Okay, at least 6 more people. So at that time, around 7 people are thinking on that same idea. Okay? At least in India, not beyond. At least in India, they will be thinking about that particular idea. Now, it's not about idea; it is about execution. Okay, and it is about how well you can execute. So I would actually joke with Ashutosh and Mukesh at times that running a startup is like running, okay, and running blindly as fast as you can. Okay, so especially I would joke with Ashutosh that you are running as fast as you can, and then at times you would go and hit a pole or hit a tree and then fall down. Okay, and then you will get up and then again start running. Okay, so people have to play various roles. Okay, one of the person is going to run. His job is to run as fast as that person can. Okay, but the job of the other person is to see whether that run which is being made is actually made in the right direction or not. Okay, more often than not, what happens is that if you also get very deeply involved in execution, you tend to lose sight of whether you are actually trying to solve the problem or whether you are trying to solve the problem that you have imagined exist in your head. So it becomes important at times to take a step back, okay, and really think and see that where you are going, okay, and then decide, okay, that yes, this strategy actually is the strategy which is going to take us to the next logical milestone. Okay. As far as starting up with a new idea is concerned, so see, we are now living in times where a lot of things have eased out. Okay, reaching out to a person is a lot easier now. Okay, we are having this this session, okay, which probably even 8 years, 9 years back wouldn't have been possible in this format. Okay, so so yes, it actually presents a lot of different opportunities if you think about it. Even the last 8-9 months have been very, very challenging for everybody around the globe, for the startups, for various companies, for people at a very personal level, um, and employees and everybody else. Okay, and there are people who are kind of finding it very, very difficult to cope with this entire thing. People have lost jobs. Okay, but everything has a silver lining. Okay, so even this thing has precipitated the adoption of the online medium. Okay, whether it is for education, whether it is for buying things, which in itself opens up a lot of opportunities. So edtech, according to me, a year back was a growing field, but now it is on a hyper growth model. Okay, and when we talk about edtech, there are a lot of things that happens around education. Okay, just a pure play teacher and a student model which happens is not the only thing which should be getting solved by edtech. Okay, a lot of peripheral things can be done around that. Okay, similarly, if you pick up healthcare, so a lot of things can be done around healthcare as well. Okay, so from that standpoint, it is all about what you guys want to do. If you really feel about a particular problem that needs to be solved, okay, I would say that evaluate that problem well. Okay, see if it is big enough to be solved. Okay, now when I say about a problem which is big enough to be solved, it is with certain caveats. See, not every meeting or not every business or every startup needs to raise venture capital. Okay. There are businesses which are very successful businesses, but a VC would not touch those businesses with a barge pole. Okay, but they are very successful businesses. They are generating a huge amount of money. Okay, and they are run by very, very smart and very great people from a business perspective. So you need to decide that whether this is something which I want to kind of do as a business, okay, and bootstrap and kind of scale it up slowly. Have a kind of a model in which you figure out that yes, I would have built something which is not easy to replicate by anybody else, or even if it is easy to replicate, there is a space for multiple people or multiple such businesses to exist. Okay, so there is a space for me also to exist, at least let's say for the next 5 or 6 years. Okay, by which time frame I would have achieved these things business wise and hence personally as well. So that is my objective of the entire thing. Okay, if you are entering a kind of a domain or an industry or solving a problem which requires a large amount of money, obviously, which is something which not everybody can do, so then you need the help of external money. Now external money comes in with their own caveats. Okay, and when you are taking external money, you are actually working under a lot of pressure from the investors in order to achieve these specifics. So the VCs would look for something else. If they are putting in money and valuing your business initially, let's say at $10 million, okay, they would be looking for at least a 20 or a 30 times exit on that particular thing, which means that your business should have a potential to grow to at least $200 million to $300 million. Okay, if your business cannot grow to $200 to $300 million, the VCs are not going to put money into your business. Doesn't mean that your business is a bad business. Okay, you could be doing a business which is only $30 million. Okay, it's still a great business to do. It makes a neat profit of, let's say, $3 million. Okay, which job gives you that?
Yes, sir. I completely agree. It's the idea alongside the execution that matters. As also said by the Peter F. Drucker, ideas doesn't move the mountains. It just ideas just show where the bulldozer is, and the bulldozer show the mountains, shake the
Yes.
mountains, I would say. So from here, I guess Kasturi will take over.
So now we have a quick rapid fire round plan for you.
Mhm.
So you can answer in a few words or a sentence.
Sure.
Okay. So describe your startup in 2 words.
My startup,
Any
the one
of
that
your
I am doing
startup,
right
you have
now.
multiple.
The one that I am doing right now.
Yeah, sir, that will do.
So, cards and fintech.
Okay. So one thing you will tell your 18-year-old self.
Oh, 18-year-old self. Take that chip off your shoulder.
What business do you wish you founded?
I founded the business which I wish I founded. Okay.
Favorite book for startup enthusiasts?
So I have a slightly different philosophy about the books. I do read books, but I won't be able to say a favorite books. Okay, because I tend to kind of pick up few learnings from each of the books. Okay, and that is how I actually do it in my personal life as well. I don't have any specific role model. I don't like role models at all. Okay, personally. Okay, and I feel that everybody should have their own avatar or the persona of what they want to kind of seek. Okay, and should go ahead with that.
So what is that you wouldn't be the same without?
Wouldn't be seen without my phone.
That's the most honest answer, sir.
Yeah, of course. You can't be seen without your phone. You can be seen without your wife, but can't be seen without your phone.
Yeah.
So I see a question from Isha, where she's asking that with the social commerce market growing really strong with Instagram stores and Facebook marketplace, how much do you think the e-commerce market shrinked? Also, what impact did businesses that happens to be a social e-commerce platforms like Glowroad and Meesho, which is backed by Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and recently it also bagged 125 million funds from Naspers, Sequoia, SAF Partners, and Xinhui Capital. See, e-commerce market is not going to shrink. This is one thing you guys need to realize. The market will never shrink. Okay, the market is only going to grow. What is the share of the e-commerce transaction of the total retail transactions which happens in the country? Okay, I mean, it's still less than 10%. In developed countries like US and all, where the entire retail is, you can say, like more than 95% of the retail is organized, you have about 22 to 24% e-commerce penetration. Okay, now, which means the majority is still retail, is a brick and mortar thing. Okay, so the e-commerce is always going to grow from here. It is not going to shrink. Okay, the way e-commerce services and products are going to be consumed might change shape and form. So Myntra does a pure play selling. Okay, Flipkart does a pure play selling. Amazon does a pure play selling. They list the products. You go and buy the products from there. Okay. Now, then came the second wave. Okay, which was like social selling. Okay, so as you have put Glowroad and Meesho, which come under the ambit of social commerce, even though my assessment and my reading is that they are actually not social commerce. Okay? They started off with a social commerce thing, okay, where they said that, yes, I would make a network of resellers where I will actually put products out there which you will not get elsewhere. And the idea was to organize these resellers which were mostly unorganized in nature, like some women in the apartment complex and all. They would typically be very enterprising women and would actually go out and sell some certain kind of products and all. So that was the idea with which both GlowRoad and Meesho started, and GlowRoad being run by another close friend of mine who is the founder, Kunal. Okay.
Yes, sir.
They have come a very long way now. Okay, I mean, when you start seeing that it's a social commerce which is happening, so, and you say that you are selling to resellers, okay, you have the minimum quantity listed over there as one. When you have the minimum quantity listed over there as one, what does it mean? Anybody can go and buy.
So I think it's a kind of e-commerce only. But sir, my question is that these are huge markets where all the women are trying, where those women who want to work from home and earn money, there are so much, the market is huge. Like in 2 years back, I read in some article that it's a $200 billion industry. So with that perspective, I feel social e-commerce is here to stay. So has that affected the e-commerce market as well?
No, it has not affected the e-commerce market, because you need to understand one thing. None of the companies, the bigger ones, have actually reported reduced numbers. Okay, they have not reported reduced numbers. And mind you, this is when the likes of companies like Shine, okay, Club Factory, which are basically China related e-commerce fashion websites, okay, they also had a huge amount of traction in India till recently when we were shut down. Before that, they had huge amount of traction in India. So we need to understand one thing, that when the overall pie of the retail transactions itself is very small, less than 10% in India, okay, for e-commerce, it is going to grow. So the social commerce is also going to grow. The e-commerce is also going to grow. So I won't say that the e-commerce buyers are moving away from, let's say, Myntra to GlowRoad. Some are, okay, but a lot more are coming and buying from Myntra. They are first-time buyers. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. So may I add a little more to the to my question?
Mm-hmm.
So allow. Yes, sir. So, sir, the try-on facility that Myntra provides, you can try and then return if you don't like the product. So even that, I think that facility is giving a lot of hiccups in the profits. So, do you want to guide us about that?
Yeah. See, again, it is a question of profits come after that. Okay, when you sit down and you analyze, for example, you do a return analysis, okay, of all the returns that you get as an e-commerce shipment. When you do a return analysis, you figure out that one of the highest reasons of the return happens to be a size mismatch or a fit mismatch. Okay, how do you avoid that? See, in a typical retail scenario, when you go to a Shoppers or when you go to a lifestyle, you would actually go to the trial room, try the garment, and then buy it. Okay,
Yes,
you don't have this kind of option when you are buying online, right? So, in order to kind of prevent that from happening, Myntra introduced, and some other websites also introduced this particular feature, wherein you can actually try and buy. Okay, so this is not available on all the garments, but there are certain garments on which this is available. Certain brands they don't allow this try and buy feature. Okay, but certain brands do. And for the brands that do allow the try and buy feature, okay, the returns are actually lesser than the other brands. Okay, because typically, if I have to share a number with you, the returns for apparel category are around 27 to 28%. So I have some more questions over here. Okay, how did you come up with the name Myntra? Okay, so Myntra again is a very loose rearrangement of me and my art. Okay, so that is how we came up with Myntra. Then Manan asked, what was the reason you decided to exit personalized market? Probably you have been making a good chunk of profits in that too. What was it? Because that segment wasn't making a large profit, or only because you wanted to enter into more universal market? So good question. We exited the personalized market because the personalized market in India was only a certain size. Okay, it was only $100 million market at that point of time. Okay, so when we sat down with Tiger Global, especially Lee and all, he brought us a report. He said that, hey, listen, you guys are doing wonderfully well in this particular space, but this is what the numbers are. Okay, and you guys can decide that obviously you can't grow, you can't take more than 80% share of the market, so you can at best be a $80 million top line company. Do you want to be that, or do you want to kind of leapfrog and enter into a category which is much more than that? So he said that you are primed up at this point of time for moving into a category which is a broader fashion and lifestyle category. So why not do that? Okay, do it, move into that particular category. That was the reason why we kind of exited the personalized market and then moved into this particular thing. Shreyans asked, sir, how important it is to zoom in and zoom out of operations as a founder when you are running full throttle? It is important, as I said, Shreyans. It is very difficult. Okay, I actually find it very, very difficult. Okay, that when you are neck down into something, you really find it very, very difficult to kind of zoom out and start looking at things from a very critical angle, from a third person perspective. Okay, it's not easy, but you need to do that, believe me. Okay, because if you are not doing that, then you would be actually making some mistakes which could have otherwise been avoided. Makhija Paras asked, Indian consumers are generally price sensitive, and especially in case of B2B segment, businesses demand lower cost because of tough competition. How did you manage to keep up the quality and satisfaction along with being the leader in B2B market in the past? What has been the challenges for the same? See, so yes, you are right. Indian market, Indian consumer is typically very, very price sensitive. Okay, and that is the reason why there had been a mad run of discounts in the entire e-commerce. Okay, in fact, the entire e-commerce market got built because of discounting to a great extent. Okay, otherwise, I would say it would have been probably 1/3 of what it is now right now. Okay, the adoption would have been that slow. Having said that, initially there were hits which were being taken by the company. Okay, so while the supply chain challenges were there, while the logistics challenges were there, okay, you would actually end up supplying or selling goods at a lower cost, at a lower price to the consumer, because your immediate competition is selling it at a deeper discount. Okay, so it was not a good scenario to be in, but unfortunately it was the market dynamics. Okay, you would be in a kind of a situation which was, I would say, last man standing. Okay, so you have more money, you kind of run for that. Okay, if somebody has lesser money, then that person would be left gasping and would ultimately die away. Okay, so luckily for us, we were able to raise money when it was needed, and we were able to kind of take hits for a longer time. Okay, so yes, we were able to kind of outrun the competition. But that was not the only reason why we outrun the competition. We were able to gather more money because of variety of other factors as well. Okay, and one of the other factors was because of our unwavering attention to detail and focus on the customers. Dipanshu asked, according to you, what role does mentorship play in building a startup in initial and later stages? It does play a very, very big role. Okay, it does play a very big role. I am at this point of time, I am actively mentoring, apart from running my own startup, I am actively mentoring at least 3 startups. Okay, and I sincerely believe that the days when we started 14 years back, we would have somebody to actually advise us and mentor us, and it would have saved us a lot more time. Okay, we would not have made some of the mistakes that we did. So I am completely with you, Dipanshu, on this, that mentorship does play a very, very big role. Okay, and if you are able to find a good mentor, then yes, please by all means do so. Sayandeep asks, how did you manage to get the clothing brands on board to your platform? What was your primary value proposition? So this is very interesting, okay, because when we reached out the first time to actually onboard some of the clothing brands, we were very harshly turned away. Okay, we were said that okay, these are like bunch of some youngsters doing something and online, and they are trying to kind of disrupt our operations. I won't take the name of the company, okay, and then really we don't want to, at this point of time, we really don't want to do anything online. So we have enough which is going offline. So we will connect at a later point of time. Exactly 1 year later, that company reached out to us on the board line. They called us on the board line. Okay, they said that no, we want to be onboarded. Okay, we want to tie up with you. We want to partner with you. Okay, so that's how the tides turn actually. Okay, and yes, you will find it very, very difficult to crack the first partnerships, to crack the first customers, okay, to get these things going for you. But when the first one happens, the second one becomes a lot easier, okay, and the third one becomes even more easier, okay. And if you're able to go do a very good job of keeping the first 2-3, then believe me, the others would automatically follow. Okay, so for us, it also happened like that. Okay, and the PR that we were able to do at the right time with the numbers that we had actually also helped us. Okay, because there were a lot of forward-looking companies at that point of time, and believe me when I say that even before Myntra moved into fashion and lifestyle category, you had websites which were being run by Shoppers Stop and Lifestyle, okay, and they were the players in fashion and lifestyle. They were not able to do anything at all, okay. In fact, they still aren't able to do anything at all online, okay. So I mean, if you would have gone back in time, then you would have said that, okay, hey, listen, why this site will succeed, okay, Myntra will not succeed. They don't know about the brands. These guys don't come from a fashion background, okay. They have never done a consumer business. These are the guys, the Landmark Group, the Shoppers Stop. They are the ones who have been doing this. They have been running a very, very successful business for the last 20-25 years. So these are the guys who should be able to crack the e-commerce for fashion, okay. Myntra shouldn't be able to crack it. It happened the other way around, okay. So so yes, initial partnership tie-up is very difficult, but it gets easy after that. Shruti asks, what motivates and inspires you in a stressful situation? Okay, so there are quite a few stressful situations that you would encounter on a day-to-day basis, okay, when you are running a business, okay. You see, it is very very easy to kind of get stressed out and be distracted, okay, and still it happens with me, okay. But what I have done over a period of time is, and this is also what kind of keeps me going, is that I actually always look at what I am out here to achieve, okay. I am out here not to basically enter into an argument with my other co-founder, or if a deal has not gone my way, I would actually fret on that, okay. Yes, it sucks, okay, but then that is the nature of the occupation that you have chosen, okay. You have to look beyond that, okay. You have to ultimately see whether you are moving in the right direction, you are moving closer to your end goal or not. If you are, then you will get out of that stressful situation. If you are not able to get out of that stressful situation even then there is something which is seriously wrong, okay. So then you need to kind of think about that really very carefully. Shweta asked that I know industry what deals in ethnic wear. Do you think there's potential in online wedding dress selling given the trust issues that Indian consumers have and it's seasonal? There is definitely a potential in online wedding dress selling, okay. And a lot of online wedding dress selling does happen online as well, okay. Now the wedding dress, again, there are two kind of dresses, okay. One is a bride dress, okay, and the other is the dress which is worn by the close friends and the family members of the bride. Okay, so two separate market exist. Obviously, the dress of the bride is the costliest dress, and the price points really go a lot higher. So that market is a very high touch and feel market. Okay, and you would actually find it little difficult to crack it completely online, I would say, because I mean, it can go anywhere from 10,000 rupees to there is no upper limit. 5 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees. I've seen people spending 4-5 lakh rupees on the wedding dresses. Okay, so again, it's a personal choice. But again, if that kind of high touch and feel is required, then you really can't do it online. Okay. It's not to say that category won't move, but it would move very slowly. Okay, but the other part of like the dresses which are worn by bride's friends, the family members, and all, yes, they have a potential to be taken online. And if there is a kind of a niche that can be created, so that niche, I would say, would kind of do well, in my opinion. Kishika asks, how should one go about selecting a founding team for a startup, since this is the most important aspect of the company? Yes, so typically when you are setting up a company, if you are all alone, it is actually, I would say it is the best case scenario, because then you can search for the other team person with absolutely no hindrances at all. Okay, and you know that if, let's say, if I want to do, for example, let me go back in time. Let's say if it was Mukesh only who wanted to start Myntra, and there were no Ashutosh and Vineet, and Mukesh would have known or would have thought that, okay, I want to do Myntra in the current shape and form. So then it would have made sense for him that he would have picked up somebody who comes with a fashion background. Okay, so that would have actually helped ease out a lot of things. Okay, somebody with an operations background. Okay, so so you need to identify the key skills which are going to be needed in order to achieve the final product or the service that you are going to be offering to the customer. Okay, everything involves selling. Okay, so selling is obviously the key. Okay, and almost all the founders are in some way or the other involved in selling. Okay, whether directly or indirectly, you are involved in selling. Some are more directly involved in selling, some are less, but you are involved in selling. So selling is not the criteria, but apart from selling, if there are specific skills which are there. Okay, for example, I already told you that I am working on a fintech stealth mode startup as of now. Now, when I chose the founders for this particular startup, I was extremely sure that I had to have a person who was having a good background and a good knowledge about fintech. And we got one. Okay, because otherwise it would have been very, very difficult for us. Okay, so you need to identify. Okay, and also need to consider that not everything is needed on day one. Okay, so you know that once the product is ready, once I have got the initial set of customers, then there is going to be a different kind of person needed to kind of scale it up. But that person is not needed now. Okay, so at that time when I reach there, I will hire that person, but not now. Okay, what is really needed for me to get from point A, the starting point, to the next level milestone is what I should be looking for in the founding team. Shraddha asks that an entrepreneur can tackle only one or two opportunities and problems all the time. How you distinguish between opportunities and ideas, considering you started so many startups? Yes, you're right. I would say that if you are doing a startup, then you can do only one. You cannot do more than one. Okay. And if you are doing one, then you have to be convinced enough on that particular startup, the idea, the goal, that you should not waver from that particular idea, come what may. Okay. Of course, it doesn't mean that you don't do course corrections, you don't take cognizance of the way the market is moving or other such dynamics. But yes, you need to be extremely careful that hey, my friend is doing something interesting and he has raised a lot more money in his startup. So am I doing something wrong? It's a normal question to have, but doesn't really mean that your startup idea is wrong or your thing is wrong. Okay, it's not that. So if you are really very convinced about that, you are not going to face problem in terms of being focused on that particular idea. Dipanshu says that startups usually fall into a trap of micromanaging things. How could they avoid that still managing same level of operations? Yes, it's very true, Dipanshu. Startups typically would fall into micromanaging things, and that's what typically founders would do because they would like to kind of get involved in all aspects of running the startup. But it is important to at a point to kind of let go of certain things. So that is the purpose of the team and a very clear distribution of responsibilities between the team members. Okay, so if you have hired a technology person, yes, you have hired that person, trust that person on technology. Okay, so you can ask questions. Nobody is taking you the right for asking the questions. You can ask questions, you can ask as many questions as you want. You can have an external person come in and do a kind of a review of the entire system and the architecture. Nobody is stopping you from doing it. But if that person has been chosen, that person has been chosen with after doing enough due diligence that you should be able to trust that person to execute on that. Okay, so if that person is saying that I want to build this using this particular technology, then yes, you ask your questions, and if you are convinced, then go ahead with that. Okay, so similarly it is for the other roles and responsibilities as well. Okay, so you monitor each department, you monitor each functions by setting specific KRAs for that, and if those KRAs are being met, if those metrics are being achieved, then you know that they are actually moving in the right direction. For a particular function, if they are not moving in that particular direction, in that correct direction, you know that there is an issue, there is a problem. Okay, either with the way the things are being done or the person itself is a problem. Okay, so then you need to correct it.
I guess that would be all, sir. So it was really a great to know about your journey, and thank you very much for taking your time out of our busy schedule to enlighten us with your knowledge. The students definitely gained valuable insights from your experience. We hope it was a positive experience for you as well. Again, my sincere thanks for boosting the entrepreneurial spirits of everyone present here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being a patient, giving me a patient hearing. Okay, I hope my journey has been able to kind of add some insights and some value to what you guys plan on doing and or what you are already doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Best of luck to all of you, and have a great evening. Bye.
Bye.